Okay, we'll start now. See, in last classes, what we have done is we have discussed in detail the uh, exam paper of 2025. We have done a detailed analysis and also explained what is the nature of whole question paper as well as various other questions in various parts for both the papers, paper 1 and paper 2 of philosophy. So today what we are going to do is we'll start each section by section. We'll try to see what questions were asked and what can be the best possible answer for that. How to write good answers, that also we have discussed in last classes, because how one can write balanced answers uh, and good answers with good flow of paragraphs, right from introduction till conclusion. So that also we'll try to see today. So we will start with today, we will start with Western philosophy, paper 1, section A. We'll try to complete in this class. In next classes, we will take up section B, Indian philosophy, and then socio-political philosophy questions, and then philosophy of religion. So I hope that in next, including this class, in 4 classes, we will be able to complete the discussion on various questions of 2025 exam. And I feel that will be quite useful to the students who are preparing. 2024 exam questions we have already discussed earlier in earlier classes. Videos are already available on YouTube, so you can see there. Uh, 23 questions and 22 questions. Also, few questions I have discussed in different topics when I was discussing those topics. So I have taken up. Not all questions I have discussed, but then after seeing these two papers, 2024 and 2025, definitely you will be able to understand how good answers are written. And accordingly, then you can practice also and prepare also for the exam. So now we'll start with Western philosophy. So I will just share the document and then we can discuss. Uh, See, in Western philosophy and Indian philosophy questions, as you know, the format and structure of paper was as usual. However, the questions were more indirect and more critical in nature, more comparative in nature compared to other years, which I have already discussed in detail in previous classes. So we'll start directly with the questions. So see, this first question, as you know, it has 5 parts, 10 marks each, 150 words. Each answer has to be written. Uh, so first part A was from the Plato topic. Uh, Sentence was given and it was said that directive was to elucidate. So ideas are timeless and spaceless. Elucidate with reference to Plato. So this was the question. Now, even though, in fact, I earlier also have told, even though directive is not to critically examine or evaluate or critically evaluate, it's always better to write very briefly some critical comments or some comparative statements that will upgrade the quality of answer, and definitely it's going to be of good help for fetching the marks. So, and also the references have to be mentioned uh, in the answers, philosophers' names, their writings, and technical words also, which may be sometimes in Western philosophy, Greek and Latin and English also. In Indian philosophy, if you come, it will be maybe in Sanskrit or Hindi also. So that also one has to mention. So now this question, if you see, ideas are timeless and spaceless, elucidate with reference to Plato. Plato in dialogues like the Republic and Phaedo, so these are his two books, distinguishes between the word of becoming, changing particulars, and word of being, eternal forms. Forms such as, so you see, in one sentence itself, in a way, it's introduction also, and also directly coming to the eternal forms. So without wasting number of words, you are directly reaching to the essence of the question. and then you will continue accordingly. Forms such as justice, beauty, equality, and the good are immutable universals, existing beyond time and space. Particulars merely participate. Uh, Methexis, I mean, this is again uh, Greek term in them. A flower fades, but the form of beauty endures. A drawn circle is imperfect, but the idea of circle is flawless. True knowledge, uh, again, episteme and noesis arise only by grasping such timeless and spaceless realities, unlike doxa tied to flux. So you see, some Greek words, original Greek words used, have been used here also. Now, after explaining this, then some critical view also needs to be mentioned. So Aristotle was one of the important critique of Plato. So he was his disciple as well, but he was a good critique also. So his views also now we are taking up. Aristotle in Metaphysics, again it is his book, objected that separate forms are a needless second word, and through the third man argument, third man argument is again argument from regression. Third man argument showed how participation leads to infinite regress. So this is argument. Later, Plotinus internalized forms into hierarchy of the one, while modern critics like Russell, Whitehead, and Ockham questioned their independent status. So now you see in the critical view also, positive point as well as negative, both have been mentioned. So it has to be a balanced criticism. It cannot be one-sided. So that also we should know. Thus, though contested, Plato's theory remains foundational in providing an unchanging ground for truth, mathematics, and moral values. So this completes in 150 words in a very balanced manner the answer of first part. Now again we'll come to B. In the empirical world, everything is compound of matter and form. Evaluate this statement with reference to Aristotle. So now this question comes from Aristotle. So Plato already, part A was from Plato, now it's part B is from Aristotle. Now here the directive is evaluate. So which means anyway you have to write 30 to 40% critical views or comparative views you have to mention. So after exposition, you have to definitely mention about 30%, 35% criticism, as well as even conclusion also can be included in that. So Aristotle's hylomorphism, so this is again a very important term from Aristotle, which covers this question, explains that every substance, ousia, these are Greek words, in the empirical world is a compound of matter and form. Matter is pure potentiality, while form gives actuality and identity. A branch, now again, just to explain this idea, example, a branch lump becomes a statue when shaped. In living beings, the body is matter and soul is form. So these are basically examples have been mentioned here, just to explain the idea given before. This account, along with Aristotle's doctrine of four causes, Aristotle has given the doctrine of four causes, that is material, formal, efficient, and final. These were four Aristotle's theory of causation. Grounds explanation of change and avoids Plato's transcendent dualism by rooting universals within particulars. So in previous question itself, we have seen Plato's view, and this is basically, if you see, again a very linked kind of part B has been asked, which is linked with part A. If you see, both Aristotle and Plato are also in a way linked, but these two questions are also linked in that way. Yet difficulties remain. So now we will come to critical evaluation, because we have to evaluate this. In God as unmoved mover, matter disappears, challenging universality. Aquinas extended hylomorphism into theology, but Descartes' dualism rejected the unity of body and soul. Kant argued categories, not metaphysical forms, organized experience, while Russell and Quinn dismissed form as redundant under modern science. So you see, in this paragraph, if you have gone through the Western philosophy, because every philosopher has said something regarding the matter and form, and whether it supports Aristotle or whether it is opposed. So very briefly, it has been mentioned. I mean, this paragraph will show that you have gone through whole syllabus and you understand how comparisons can be made, how views can be compared uh, from one philosopher to other, and how linkages can be established also. So, I mean, this paragraph explains depth in your answer. So please understand like that. Still, Aristotle's framework endures. So now this is the concluding paragraph, obviously. So here we will tell its value, its importance, its use. So still, Aristotle's framework endures as a profound metaphysical model, illuminating debates on substance, identity, mind-body unity, and persistence through change. So this completes part B. Now part C. Explain the difference between being for itself and being in itself as presented by Sartre. Sartre, one of the important existentialists, has made a distinction between being for itself and being in itself. And this question has been asked. This is a very direct kind of question, because if you have gone through the chapter of existentialism and Sartre, you will be very easily able to answer that. So here, basically, you have to explain the difference between being for itself and being in itself as per Sartre. So now let us see how we can answer this. For Jean-Paul Sartre, reality is divided into being in itself and being for itself. Being in itself refers to things of the external world. They are self-contained, complete, inert, and unconscious. A stone for or a table simply is. It has no awareness or freedom. So this is uh, being in itself. A stone or table is being in itself. Now, being for itself denotes human consciousness. It is incomplete, negating, and self-transcending, always projecting possibilities beyond what is given. Consciousness, following Husserl's notion of intentionality, is aware of its own lack and creates itself through choices. So again, this is a very important concept of choices, which has been used by Sartre. So that also we are mentioning here. For instance, a person dissatisfied with a job can imagine alternatives and freely choose a new path. Hence, Sartre claims that existence precedes essence. I mean, this is very, very important statement from Sartre. So this also is directly related with this kind of distinction between the two. So therefore, it has been mentioned. Critics argue. So again, we are mentioning here briefly, very briefly, critical view. Critics argue that Sartre overstates freedom. Heidegger emphasizes being in the world rather than dualism, while Merleau-Ponty highlighted embodiment and situational limits. Marxists stress social condition. Still, Sartre's distinction remains central in existentialism, capturing the tension between brute facticity and radical freedom of human existence. So still, Sartre is very, very important philosopher as far as this distinction is concerned. Now we'll go to D part. The golden mountain is very high. Discuss this statement in context of Russell's theory of description. Now, this is also again a direct question, because see, in this paper, some questions were direct, quite easy, but most of the questions, as you will see, were not direct. I mean, we're indirect, comparative, critical in nature. So this is one of the direct questions. The golden mountain is very high. Discuss this statement in context of Russell's theory of descriptions. Bertrand Russell's theory of descriptions in on denoting. On denoting is again his book explains how language handles apparent reference to non-existence. A sentence like "the golden mountains are very high" seems meaningful, though no such object exists. Against Mignon, who admitted a realm of non-existence objects, Russell treated definite descriptions as incomplete symbols, analyzable in logical form. The golden mountain is very high means there exists one and only one mountain that is golden and it is very high. Since no such mountain exists, the existence clause fails and the proposition is false rather than meaningless. So this is what has been proved by Russell. His distinction between primary and secondary occurrence of description further clarified scope in nested contests. But again, critics like Strawson argued that such sentences presuppose existence, so the question of truth or falsity does not arise. Donelan's murderer of Smith example showed different referential uses, while uh, Cripp's notion of rigid designators later shifted debates. Yet Russell's analysis remains foundational in clarifying reference, existence, and meaning. So even though Russell's description uh, is quite useful and foundational, yet it has been criticized by a number of contemporary philosophers. Now we'll go to part E of the question 1. How does Hegel challenge Kant's distinction between phenomena and noumena? Discuss. Now this again question is direct, but in this question, I mean, a little tricky it's there, because see here, neither whole Hegel philosophy has been asked nor Kant's philosophy has been asked. A very pointed question is that how does Hegel challenge Kant's distinction between phenomena and noumena? So you have to simply go directly the Hegel's challenge to Kant. You cannot describe Kant in detail or Hegel and then try to come up, because 150 words, this has to be directly answered. So therefore, if you see the answer, I have attempted like that only. Kant distinguishes between phenomena, that objects as they appear, structured by space, time, and categories of understanding, and noumena, the things in themselves that remain unknowable. In Critique of Pure Reason, this distinction secures empirical science while guarding reason from speculative excesses. Now, this distinction, if you remember, was a reply to Hume also in a way. So, I mean, this saved the for saving empirical science, this kind of distinction was mentioned by Kant. Now, we'll directly go to Hegel's challenge. Hegel challenges this split in his book, Phenomenology of Spirit and Science of Logic. To posit an unknowable noumena besides knowable appearances, he argued, is contradictory. Drawing on Fichte, a self-positing ego, and Schilling's identity philosophy, Hegel held that through dialectical development, spirit mediates contradictions and progressively comprehends reality. As you know, Hegel's theory, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and it in dialectical way development takes place. The noumena is not a hidden residue, but becomes intelligible in history, for example. Freedom actualizing itself through institutions of modern state. Hence, the real is rational and rational is real. This is the statement from Hegel. So this is how he has challenged. Now, a brief comment regarding Hegel's view on Kant also should be mentioned. Schopenhauer defended Kant's noumena as will, and neo-Kantians like Cohen rejected Hegel's speculative claim. Yet Hegel's dissolution of Kant's phenomena-noumena divide decisively shaped German idealism and later thinkers such as Marx and Bradley. So this was the foundation basically of German idealism, and then even to some extent Marxism also. Now we'll go to question 2. Question 2, as you know, now question 1 has 5 parts. Question 2 will have 3 parts. Part A, Part B, Part C. A is 20 marks question. So usually 20 marks questions are answered in roughly about 300 words. So 250 to 300 words, I mean, depending what you can write. And 15 marks questions, other 2 parts, Part B and Part C, will be 15 marks questions, so which will be roughly about 200 to 225 words. In fact, I keep on telling the students, you prepare for 225 words, and for 20 marks question, prepare for 300 words. So accordingly, this is there. Now we'll go to Part A. What are the basic tenets of rationalism? How does Descartes build a system of philosophy in consonance with them? Discuss. So now this question has 2 parts. If you see, what are the basic tenets of rationalism, you have to tell. And then you have to explain how does Descartes build a system of philosophy in consonance with those basic tenets. And this you have to discuss. Discuss means again you have to give some critical views, you have to give some comparative views and evaluate also. So now let us start. Rationalism holds that reason is primary source of knowledge. This is one of the very, very fundamental principle of rationalism. Independent of sense knowledge, independent of sense experience. Its central tenets include. So now we'll give a list of its central tenets, because when some question is asked like that, then you can give either in bullet points or you can give in 1, 2, 3 listing also. So we have given here listed the existence of innate ideas such as infinity, perfection, and mathematical truths. This is one of the basic tenets. Second, the role of intuition and deduction in attaining certainty. This is again one of the characteristics of rationalism. Then the quest for necessary and universal truths. Then the conviction that reality is fundamentally rational in structure. So these are basically basic tenets of rationalism. While Plato and Augustine foreshadowed this, the tradition matured with Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz. So, as you know, these three philosophers were called, are called rationalist philosophers in Western philosophy. So, rationalism matured with these only. Now we'll go to, after discussing what are the basic tenets of rationalism, we'll go to Descartes, how Descartes builds his philosophy around this system, around these tenets. Descartes, in the meditation again, his book, builds a system fully consonant with rationalism. Employing methodic doubt, he rejects all beliefs open to uncertainty, including sensory ones, until he reaches the indubitable cogito ergo sum. From there, by clear and distinct perception, he deduces the existence of perfect God. So that also he has done. Arguing that the idea of infinity could not originate in the finite mind. For example, his example of triangle essence, God being no deceiver secures the reliability of reason and validates mathematics and science. Descartes then distinguishes res cogitans, that is thinking mind, and extended matter, producing his influential substance dualism. So this is the basic philosophy of Descartes, woven around basic tenets of rationalism. Now, since we have to discuss this, so we have to critically also explain to what extent that philosophy is consistent, or to what extent Descartes' views are correct. So critically, empiricists like Locke denied innate ideas, while Hume reduced causality and self-fit to custom, exposing reason's limit. Within rationalism, Leibniz reformulated Descartes by positing monads and pre-established harmony. Cartesian circle, using God to validate clear and distinct ideas while also relying on them to prove God, remains a classic objection of Descartes. So this is very, very important. Cartesian circle is one of the important objections against Descartes, because he follows a circular argument. So this is what is Cartesian circle. Kant synthesized traditions, arguing knowledge begins with experience but is structured by a priori categories. In the 20th century also, Queen's critique of the analytic synthetic distinction further eroded rationalist assumptions. So all these critical views and have been can be mentioned. And now the conclusion. Thus, while critics exposed flaws, Descartes' rationalism remains the classic paradigm of reason's quest for certainty, system, and universality, shaping modern philosophy's trajectory. Very important, because Descartes is called the father of modern philosophy, so he is quite very, very important that way. I will go to part 2b. All determination is negation. Comment with reference to Spinoza. Now, this is a statement from Spinoza, as you know, most of you may be knowing. So, this on this comment has to be made for 15 marks in about 225 words. The maxim all determination is negation is associated with Spinoza, though it has roots in scholastic logic and Giordano Bruno, and was later systematized by Hegel. Spinoza employs it explicitly in later 52 jails. This is again his writing, where he argues that every determination involves limitation and thus negation. In the Ethics, again, Spinoza's book, Spinoza's substance monism identifies God or nature as the one infinite substance with infinite attributes. Finite beings are modes. Determinate expression of the substance to be determinate is to be finite. I mean, this is the actual meaning of the sentence, and hence to exclude other possibilities. A triangle, for instance, is defined as a three-sided precisely by negating the possibility of being four-sided. All finite beings are thus limited with only infinite substance is without negation. So this is the exposition of this. Now we'll go to a critical evaluation of this. Critically, Hegel reinterpreted this maxim as the motor of dialectical development. So Hegel is one of the important critics. Leibniz resisted Spinoza's denial of individuality, proposing monads with inner activity. Jacobi accused Spinoza of fatalism, while Schelling criticized rigidity of his system. Yet Spinoza himself redefined freedom as an understanding necessity. As you know, I mean, he has reinterpreted, or he has given a very, very different interpretation of freedom. So understanding necessity, though modes are limited, recognizing their place in infinite substance is genuine liberation. This is Spinoza's view. In modern times, Deleuze has read determination not as a mere denial, but as productive expression. Thus, while contested, Spinoza's maxim become a hinge between classical rationalism and German idealism, shaping metaphysics, logic, and conceptions of freedom. Now we'll go to part C of the second question. Examine Hegel's reputation of causal relation and Kant's response to it. So this question again has two parts. First, you have to explain what is Hume's refutation of causal relation, and then second, how Kant has responded. And since the directive is to examine, so we have to also critically evaluate this whole process. In the Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, this is the book of Hume, David Hume refuted the idea of causality as an objectively necessary relation. When we say fire causes heat, or one billiard ball sets another in motion, what we actually perceive is only a constant conjunction or events. We never observe necessity itself. The idea of necessary connection arises from habit or custom. So this is the important view from Hume. The idea of necessary connection arises from habit or custom. Repeated experiences lead the mind to expect one event after another. Hence, the principle every event must have a cause is neither demonstrable by reason, which yields so every event must have a cause is neither demonstrable by reason, which yields analytic truths, nor derived from experience, which shows only what is never what must be. So by reducing causality to custom, so this is what he has done. Hume denied it objective validity and left induction without a rational foundation. Later thinkers such as J.S. Mill restated causation as uniform succession, while Russell and Quinn argued that modern science and naturalized epistemology dispense with it, showing that continuing force of Hume's critique. Now, what Immanuel Kant has done, now let us come to that second part of the question. Immanuel Kant admitted, Hume awoke me from dogmatic slumber. This is a very famous statement from Kant. He accepted that necessity is not given in experience, but argued in the Critique of Pure Reason, again, book of the Kant's book, that causality is a synthetic a priori category of understanding. This is Kant's view. The sequence of billiard balls is intelligible as cause and effect only because the mind imposes causal order. Without this, coherent experience and universal science would be impossible. Kant thus reconstructed causality as a transcendental condition of knowledge. So this is what Kant's view. Though critics question whether such categories can be justified, the Hume-Kant debate remains central to modern philosophy as far as this causality and induction is concerned. I will go to question 3. We should look not to an ideal language which derives its meaning from facts and has a precise logical structure, but empirically to the ways in which languages are actually used. Explain the transition from early views of Wittgenstein to his later views on language and meaning with reference to this statement. So, as you know, Wittgenstein, a very important modern philosopher, uh, earlier his view was one view regarding language, philosophical language. Subsequently, the view totally changed. So basically, this has to be explained here. And obviously, in explaining, you have to also give the critical evaluation of Wittgenstein's views also. So now let us go to the answer. In the Tractus Logico-Philosophy, because this is his first book, early Wittgenstein, Wittgenstein argued that propositions are meaningful when they pictorially represent fact. This is called picture theory of meaning. So first he has given picture theory of meaning, and then subsequently he has come to use theory of meaning. So first we picture theory. This is picture theory of meaning, where the logical form of a proposition mirrors the logical form of reality. He envisioned an ideal language, precise and unambiguous, capable of showing the limits of thought. Philosophy in his early phase was not theory, but an activity of clarifying language and separating sense from nonsense. So this is his early Wittgenstein's view. Ethics, aesthetics, and metaphysics could only be shown, not said. This vision inspired Russell's logical atomism and the Vienna Circle also, which constitutes philosophers like Carnap, Schlick also, though Wittgenstein later distanced himself from their positivist program and his own views as well. Now, another book of Wittgenstein, Philosophical Investigation. This is from later Wittgenstein. So now you see, this he has written in 1953, and earlier book he has written in 1921. So in a gap of 30 years, roughly 32 years, how Wittgenstein has changed, we will see. He abandoned the ideal language model, which he has given earlier. Meaning, he argued, lies in use rather than in correspondence with facts. Language is woven in forms of life, and words function with their diverse language games. Concepts often lack fixed essences but display family resemblances. As with game, expressions like pain are intelligible not through private reference but through public criteria, leading to the famous private language argument. Philosophy now aims not to construct an ideological system but to dissolve confusions by examining ordinary use. This transition reflects a move from foundational representational theory to a pragmatic contextual one. So this is his earlier theory and this is his later theory. Russell criticized, now we'll go to critical evaluation of Wittgenstein's views. Russell criticized the later Wittgenstein for abandoning logical precision, while ordinary language philosophers such as Austin and Ryle developed his insights into everyday discourse. Crisp's rule following paradox further probed the implications, and critics note that later views risk relativism since meanings vary across practices without universal foundations. So thus, now in conclusion, Wittgenstein shifted from grounding meaning in ideological language reflecting facts to viewing meaning as empirical, plural, and embedded in human life. A transformation from logical atomism to linguistic pluralism. So that was the shift that reshaped 20th century philosophy, of course. Now we'll go to part B of this question, part 3. Question 3, part B. Present an exposition of verification theory of meaning as propounded by logical positivists. In this context, also differentiate between strong and weak sense of word verifiable. So first, again, this question has two parts. First part, we have to explain verification theory of meaning. And in second, we have to differentiate between strong and weak sense of the word verifiable. So now let us go. The verification theory of meaning was propounded by logical positivists of the Vienna Circle, the philosophers Schlick, Carnap, Neurath, and Reichenbach. So these were philosophers in that, and introduced to the English word by A.J. Iyer in his book Language, Truth, and Logic. Influenced by Hume's empiricism and the early Wittgenstein's tractus, they argued that the meaning of a proposition lies in the method of its verification. A statement is cognitively meaningful only if it is either analytic, as in logic, and mathematics, or empirically verifiable. Hence, water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade, this is example, is meaningful, while metaphysical claims such as God is eternal lack cognitive meaning, though they may have emotive or prescriptive significance. Ayer's distinct. So this is basically first part of the question. Now we'll go to second part, strong and weak verification distinction. Ayer distinguished between strong and weak verification. In the strong sense, a statement must be conclusively verified by observation, but this excluded universal scientific laws as like all metals expand when heated. Hence, the weak sense was adopted. A statement is verifiable if empirical evidence could in principle support or disconfirm it, even if not conclusively. So you see, now weak verification, strong verification is in a way dilution of verification theory of meaning. Because once you allow weak verification, also your earlier stand itself gets diluted. So this is what has happened. Now difficulties arose. However, the principle itself is neither analytic nor empirically verifiable, rendering it self-refuting. Karl Popper argued that science proceeds by falsifiability, not verification. Quinn, another philosopher, in Two Dogmas of Empiricism, undermined the analytic synthetic distinction on which the theory relied. Thus, although untenable as a strict criterion, the verification principle decisively shaped analytic philosophy by sharpening debates on language, science, and metaphysics. This was its use, basically, even though it has a number of contradictions and weaknesses, but still, to this extent, it was useful and remains a landmark in 20th century thought. Now, we'll go to part C. Blue is one object of sensation and green is another. And consciousness, which both sensations have in common, is different from either. Present an account of Moore's refutation of idealism with reference to this statement. So, again, we'll go to answer directly. G. Moore, in the refutation of idealism, again, it was his book, challenged the core claim of British idealism derived from Berkeley's est percipi, to be is to be perceived, and elaborated by Bradley and McTaggart, that object of experience is inseparable from consciousness and reality is ultimately mental. Moore's remark, blue is one object. So this sentence which is given in the question itself. So this is Moore's remark, blue is one object of sensation and green is another, and consciousness with both sensations have in common is different from either, illustrates this argument. For Moore, consciousness is not identical with its object. In perceiving blue, two distinct elements are involved: the quality of blue and the act of awareness of blue. The same holds for green. So what experiences share is not the object, but the conscious act itself. To conflict object and awareness, as the idealist did, is to commit a fallacy of analysis. So this difference of the act-object distinction influenced Brentano's intentionality, reasserted a robust realist metaphysics. Now, we'll critically evaluate this. Critically, Moore's sharp distinction has been questioned. Husserl emphasized intentional unity of consciousness and object, while Ryle doubted whether consciousness can be isolated as a separate act. Moore may also understate how awareness contributes to the very form of experience, yet his clarity decisively broke the dominance of absolute idealism, along with Russell, laid the foundation of analytic philosophy. So Moore was one of the founders of analytic philosophy. Thus, by disentangling act from object, disentangling act from object, more restored common sense realism. This is again very, very important conclusion. Though at the cost of overlooking subtler aspects of subject-object relations. I'll go to question 4, part A. Now, this question is a indirect question, obviously, and also tricky question. This is a comparative question, critically evaluative question. So, how does Husserl's account of I think is different from that of Descartes, critically discussed? So, Descartes also has given I think, therefore I am, and Husserl has also given the account of I think. So, both have to be compared, and actually difference has to be established, and then this whole thing has to be critically discussed. So roughly in 300 words, about 40% one has to give for critical evaluation as well, because directive is straight away critically discussed. Okay, we'll start. Descartes in Meditations, again his book, formulated the famous cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Through methodic doubt, he suspended all beliefs until he reached an indubitable foundation. The act of doubting proves the existence of a thinking subject. The I think thus discloses the ego as a substantial entity in Descartes, distinct from the body. This metaphysical self provides the certainty upon which Descartes reconstructs knowledge of God, matter, and external world, securing the rationalist ideal of absolute foundations. So this is Descartes' I think. Now we'll go to Husserl's I think. Edmund Husserl, influenced by Brentano's intentionality and drawing on Kant's transcendental unity of a perception, reinterprets the cogito within phenomenology. Through epoch and phenomenological reduction, he brackets external existence to focus on pure consciousness. For Husserl, the ego is not a metaphysical substance, but a transcendental ego. So this is main difference. The formal structure that unifies intentional acts. Consciousness is always intentional, every act directed toward an object, and the ego is inseparable from these acts. Unlike Descartes, Husserl does not use the cogito to infer metaphysical truths about God or substance, but to uncover the conditions under which meaning and phenomena are constituted. So now this clearly explains the difference between Descartes and Husserl, I think. Now we'll go to critical evaluation, because critically has to be evaluated as per directive itself, of directive of the question. Critically, Descartes secures certainty, but at the cost of rigid mind-body dualism. Because Descartes' mind-body dualism, we understand. I mean, he also come up with pineal gland theory, and then I mean, there is a problem in mind-body dualism, interaction, etc. Husserl avoids this by redefining the cogito as structural rather than substantial. Yet his account risks sliding into transcendental idealism. So there is a weakness in Husserl also and Descartes also. But these are differences. Heidegger argued that Husserl remained overly subject-centered, while Merleau-Ponty emphasized the embodied subject, and Sartre adopted intentionality while rejecting the transcendental ego. So again, these three philosophers, modern philosophers, have built on Husserl's theory. These critiques highlight that Husserl both extended and transformed Descartes' insight. Thus, while Descartes, I think, guarantees the existence of a metaphysical self, Husserl's, I think, grounds the constitution of phenomena within consciousness. In this transformation, the cogito evolves from a metaphysical certainty to a methodological tool for describing the structures of lived experience. So this is one is related with metaphysics, another is related with, in a way, phenomenology, and both are linked to that extent. Now we'll go to part B of this question 4. Question 4. We can affirm the truth of any sentence in our total system in the face of whatever experience, just so long as we are prepared to make adjustments elsewhere. Discuss this statement in the light of Queen's two dogmas of empiricism. So we'll go to discuss, because discuss again directive includes you have to give a critical view also, maybe about 25 to 30% of words. So 15 marks and 225 words question. In two dogmas of empiricism, this book has already been named in the question itself. Queen challenged two assumptions of logical positivism. First, analytic synthetic distinction, and second, reductionism. The idea that each statement can be verified against experience in isolation. For Carnap and the Vienna Circle, analytic truths like all bachelors are unmarried were secure, while synthetic truths are very empirical. Queen argued that appeals to synonymy, definition, or convention presupposes the very divide they sought to explain, rendering it untenable. Rejecting these dogmas, Queen advanced confirmation holism. This important term from Queen. No statement is tested in isolation, but only within an interconnected web of belief. Experience confronts the web as a whole, and revision can occur everywhere. Thus, we can affirm the truth of any sentence in our total system in the face of whatever experience, just so long as we are prepared to make adjustments elsewhere. So this is a statement given in the question itself. So we have concluded now this statement. Even logic and mathematics, though central, are not immune, but only more resistant to revision. Now, critical view. Critically, this collapses the positivist dream of analytic certainty, but risks relativism. Since almost any claim can be preserved by ad hoc adjustments. Karl Hempel and the critique warned it weakened confirmation. Another critique, Hilary Putman, defended indispensable distinctions, and Donald Davidson exposed reliance on the scheme content dualism. Yet, in line with Thomas Kuhn's paradigm shift, Queen captured the fallibilist dynamic nature of science. Thus, Queen replaced positivist certainty with a holistic, naturalized picture of knowledge, dissolving analytic foundations while recasting philosophy as a continuous with science. I will go to part C of question 4. Explain Berkeley's doctrine of nominalism and his reputation of abstract ideas. So here, again, two parts. First, you have to explain the Berkeley's doctrine of nominalism, and then go to his reputation of abstract ideas. Berkeley, in a treatise concerning principles of human knowledge, and three dialogues between Hylas and Philonous. These are again two books of Berkeley. Advanced his doctrine of nominalism by rejecting the existence of abstract ideas. All ideas, he argued, arise from sense or reflection and are necessary particular. He targeted Locke, who claimed that mind could form abstract general ideas such as triangle that is neither equilateral, isosceles, or nor scalene. Berkeley countered that this is impossible. Whenever one imagines triangle, it must have determinate qualities. To speak of triangle in general is to confuse the linguistic use of words with real imagery. For Berkeley, generality is explained by a function of words as signs. A particular image, say of a scalene triangle, may represent all triangles. Thus, universals are not independent entities, as in Plato's forms or Aristotle's universals, but simply names applied to collections of particulars. This constitutes his nominalism. So this is his nominalism. By denying abstract notions of matter, extension, or substance, Berkeley undermined the foundations of materialism and reinforced his immaterialism. Only ideas and spirits exist. Later empiricists like Hume followed this critique, though Kant restored universality through his a priori categories. Thus, Berkeley's reputation remains a landmark in empiricism. Though critics note it risks reducing universality to mere naming, overlooking the conceptual structures that make genuine generalizations possible. Now, I stop here because now this completes the 4 questions of part A, section A of paper 1. Next class, I would try to take up Indian philosophy section, that is section B of question paper 1. We'll try to discuss and see how good answers can be written. I hope that this exercise of giving model answers will be quite uh, useful for those students who are preparing, particularly for the next year's exam. They can understand how good answers are written. They also can uh, try to include these inputs while preparing notes, etc., and also while giving practice tests. So thank you for watching today's lecture. We'll meet again. Thank you.